The following game has been rated E for everyone by the ESRB for animated violence and comic mischief. What that means is that this game is only appropriate for those aged 6 and up. Therefore, if you are not within that age bracket, you should not be watching this video. You have been warned. Greetings and salutations. I am Outlier, and I bid you welcome to this channel. Joining me today is, of course, my usual co-hosts, Snowball and Wolf. And today we're not going to be returning back to anything because I'm going to be playing from the very beginning a game that I've enjoyed and have been I don't really want to use the word fan, but that's because I take a dim view of fanaticism. But it's a game that I've liked and enjoyed for, well, decades. And I mean quite literally, given the fact that I'm fairly certain that if I went back to the original copyright and dug it up, it would probably have been made around sometime in the late to mid 90s, I believe. Basically before the turn of the millennium, before the 21st century, fairly certain even possibly before the what most people would consider the internet being the internet, and could quite possibly be even older than you, the viewer. This old game that I've enjoyed for decades and have tried to play on pretty much every computer I've ever actually owned, and have actually gotten to work to some degree or another, is known as Lords of the Realm 2. Well, like I said, it's quite old. So the premise of Lords of the Realm 2 is that you are a lord of the realm, hence the name. The king that has been the sole ruler of the realm has passed away and left no heir to speak of. So you are one of 5 factions vying for... 5? 4? 5 factions vying for control of the realm, and because it's the medieval time period, control of the realm is handled in 2 ways. Through economic prosperity, and through the rule of, I would say law, but law is kind of more the sword, in that there's no real way to win economically short of basically burning all of your opponent's lands and letting them starve to death, which is a long drawn-out process. The shorter, generally speaking, only process to actually secure the realm for your rule is to basically take out each and every one of your opponents and challengers for the throne in a armed conflict. So I do realize that the description I just gave makes it sound a lot more complex than it actually is, or a lot more simpler than it actually is. But seeing as how this game, at least in my opinion, is better visually experienced as opposed to verbally described, it's probably best if we just continue on with it. And as such, this game is of course made by, near as we can tell, Thank you again. And that being said, let us begin.
My lord, they'd have the country ruled before choosing a successor. I have more right to rule than most.
There will be dark days ahead.
If it's to be war, then so be it. Come, we have work to do.
Alright, so this is essentially the main menu. I mean, technically this is the main menu. You have options between single player, multiplayer, and advertisements for a spin-off version known as Lords of Magic. And while this game was probably built in the early stages of the internet was still around, so you could play against other people. But I'm a hermit, and I highly doubt anybody's playing this game, at least not at the time of filming. So we should probably continue on with single player, which I have clicked. And I have options between Play Now, which is a series of preloaded maps and a full campaign. They're not intertwined other than the fact that as soon as you beat one, the next one loads. And once you finally beat all of them, you are treated to an ending sequence. You could also load a game if I have one in progress. Skirmish, I'm assuming just basically, well, Skirmish and Custom Battle, I'm assuming are pretty much the exact same thing. It's just that... Actually,
please enter your name and select your shield.
Alright, so... Skirmish is just basically the battle component. Okay. That's nice of you. But that's only one part of the game.
Please enter your name and select your shield.
Well, what I would do to set up an actual game. So if I hit continue... That's weird.
Please enter your name and select your shield.
That's grayed out for some reason. It's supposed to be blue, but it's grayed out. This game is so old, I don't think it's taken to being tweaked to actually work with modern-day operating systems. I know originally, before they came out with Steam version, or a version for good old games, my original copy wouldn't even play on Windows XP or Windows 8. Whichever version upgraded to a 64-bit operating system, the game couldn't play on. And I was miffed about that. until they came out with a version that I can play. So these are the 4 rivals for the throne: the Baron, the Knight, the Countess, and the Bishop. I would say that they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, but truth be told, other than basic army composition, they all play pretty much the exact same. Like I said, early 90s, not much, I wouldn't say not much there, but, I mean, truth be told, that's kind of accurate. So these are the various maps that I can play upon. They are various real-world countries, split up into various chunks for control over terrain. At least some of them are. I could also play on Europe if I want to. Considers that just one map. The Crusades region, which is arguably the Middle East and some of Northern Africa, Africa itself, as well as a few mismatched chunks of land. Also Quaintville, where I can only play against one person, even though there's 4 counties as they're called. And some maps are better suited than others. I wonder why Britain's here twice. Now, some of these maps I've never actually seen before, but as I said, the Steam version's a little bit more updated than the one I used to play, so things like, well, Britain's, I think, the same. They may have tweaked that a little. Ones like the Imperium, the World, Japan, the USA, South America, Butterfly, Deadlock, Chorus? Was that Taurus? Can't tell. Vortex, Patches, the Snake, Australia, Central America, Waterworld, the Hub, which apparently is also a only one opponent map. Roundabout, Knoxville, Cubium, and Snowflake are all new and ones I haven't actually seen before. These maps can take a while, so it's probably a good idea to, well, start in some way that basically allows me to, how do I want to put this? Get off the ground running and just get into the gist of the game relatively easily. So when a custom game, you can actually set various difficulty settings. So you can have it where advanced farming, where farming things like grain and whatnot do take into account seasonal weather and temperatures, and each season requires a different number of farmers to basically bring in the harvest. Army Eats means that rather than armies just foraging off in the wild, they basically eat from your county stores. Starting castle determines what castle is already created there by default for your starting county. County status is strong. Just determines basically how the number of peasants you have working for you. Exploration means that you start in a fog of war area and have to explore the map, uncovering everything. Difficulty just basically means how badly the status of the county is in when you start. Weapons determines how many weapons you start off with to build armies with. Time limit determines, because this is actually a turn-based game, I forgot to say that. Time limit determines how quickly the turns go through. Nobles is how many AI opponents, or just how many opponents you want. Army size determines your starting army, and number of crowns is your currency. You can also set it where you can either just fight only human opponents and everything else is calculated by the AI, or you just fight everybody. And again, since I'm playing by myself, I decide to fight everybody. So, never really played on Equalizer before. I mean, I would like to play on a map that's small, and I basically fight against every opponent just so I can get, just so that way the video can get a feel for, well, everybody. But I don't want to play this for 2 hours straight, so let's actually just go with one and revisit the whole everybody else later. So let's actually start with Quaintville and fight just the knight. And this game is so old it's optimized for 256 color displays. I'm not entirely certain they have a display capable of displaying so few colors nowadays.
Feed your peasants to keep them happy and make them multiply. Make weapons and create an army. Conquer thy neighbors.
That's basically how you win the game.
Right-click on items for information, left-click to perform actions. Use the slider bar to divide peasants between farming and industry. Clicking on industries on the map switches them on and off. Changes you make in a county do not take place until the following season. Cattle provide food each season, or they can be eaten.
Right, I kind of expected him to continue talking. That's the narrator or advisor. He basically tells us what we can and cannot do. But basically, this game is essentially balanced between multiple things. So there's two different types of food for your peasants to eat, and this is the number of peasants currently in Raw Siena, the county I control. It's divided between cattle and grain, and I can actually access the ration screen. So the cattle provide two different types of food, meat and dairy, and the total number of cattle I have determines exactly how much dairy it produces. And if I produce more dairy than the total population, then they just eat the dairy and don't have to worry about anything else. The other option is grain. So grain is basically wheat, and they grow and eat it, and well, it's grain, not much there. You can also change the amount of rations that they get, which increases happiness or decreases happiness if I'm running low on food. I could have them just simply eat nothing. But for right now, everybody's being fed by dairy, so I see little reason to have it lower than normal. Right, and these little squares here are my fields. So Farmland can have three different states. It can either life follow, which means it doesn't actually do anything. Right. I'm trying to scroll the map using W, A, S, and D, and I forgot that this game is so old they hadn't invented those letters yet. Anyway, so the other two options are cattle, which means that there's more space for the cows, or grain, which, rather than having the peasants eat the grain, farmers will sow the grain, and then come the autumn, they will harvest the grain. So what I generally find is it's easier to have the entire, county be fed almost entirely by grain if I can have it. I will have a few fields left over for cows, just so that way dairy and the occasional need for meat can offset the total number of, if I run low on grain and whatnot. Also, things can happen to the field. Currently, this field is flooded, which means I can't actually use it. Flooded or droughted or, scorched fields due to drought can have a very detrimental effect on your food population, especially if it hits a grain field. Also, if I had advanced farming on, which I don't, I would need to have a couple fallow fields for crop rotation.
Click on any area for details about it. Click and drag a box around any peasants you wish to move. Then click on the task area you wish to allocate them to. Blackened figures indicate that there are not enough workers to meet optimal production in that task area. Idle peasants appear in an area if you allocate more than enough labor for the task.
Alright, so this is the town center. This is basically the control interface for your county. There are basically 9 sections for it. And each of these figures represents a certain number of peasants. And that varies depending upon your total population. So for right now, each figure is 47 peasants, or at least for now that is the case. And as the helpful tooltip stated, the black figures denote needed labor. So if I have all my foresters move off the cattle, I can have my entire population working the cattle fields and still not have enough. Well, that's not true. I can have all my people work cattle, but then I won't have enough grain farmers to sow the crops. So one option that I have is to have fewer grain fields. Another option is to have fewer cows. And like I said, I'd much rather have grain than cows, so let's actually sell off. I mean, I would like to have some cow. So let's actually sell off 250 cow, and we receive 3,000 crowns for that. And this is the merchant screen. I can buy various goods and products throughout the game, so if I need cattle or grain quickly, I can purchase either cattle or grain here. And the price that you see is the sell price and the buy price. So if I need more grain, I can buy it for 4 crowns per sack, or I can sell it for 2 crowns per sack. I can also purchase industrial resources like stone or iron or wood, as well as the weapons of war, which are pikes, maces, swords, crossbows, bows, or mail, which is basically plate armor used for knights. I can also buy what's known as ale. I can't sell it or I can't produce it, and the only purpose for ale is to keep the people happy. So the more ale you purchase, the happier they get, up to +5 happiness. And the amount of ale you need to buy to get that +5 happiness is dependent upon the population. And now that I sold off 250 units of cattle, I only have 36 left, and rations now down to a quarter because the 1,169 people they need food, and there's only 108 dairy being produced by the 36 cows to feed them. And I only have, well, they'll eat 12 extra cows, but it'll be only a quarter rations, and that'll drop the happiness by 5. So if I move the bar over this way, it eventually gets to normal, but the trade-off is that they eat more grain. So between sowing the field and the population eating the wheat, I'll lose about half my grain at 245 units of grain per season, and I won't actually be able to get more grain until
these goods, my lord?
Until, as I said, next winter, technically the autumn. So what I'm going to do is, I made 3,000 crowns selling off all of my cattle, and I have 5,000 to begin with, so let's actually spend 4,000 of my now 8,000 crowns to buy 1,000 grain. So now I should have enough excess grain to tide me over through the winter, and, well, through the year I should say. And now that I have fewer cattle, I can actually dedicate more fields to grain. And now that I don't need nearly as many people, a good portion of my population is idle, and if they aren't needed for agricultural production, they can go to industrial uses. So you can have up to 2 industries, well, resource production industries I should say, at a time, and that varies per county, and some counties have only 1, other counties have 0. It's going to be wood cutting, which is down here, and iron mining for this county, which is up here. And the more peasants I move per industry determines the amount of resources I get next season. I can also have some people work the blacksmith's area.
To build a weapon, you must produce or buy the necessary...
I'm sorry, I cut him off. Basically, in order to produce weapons, I must produce produce or buy enough resources to actually make it. And currently 47 smiths are building bows, and they will produce 3 bows next season. Each bow requires 13 units of wood and 0 iron, and each weapon that I can produce has a different iron and wood value. So like for instance pikes, it's 3 iron and 6 wood. For maces, it's 4 apiece. Crossbows, it's 10 iron and 6 wood. Blacksmith, it's 10 iron and 3 wood. And then plate mill, it's 18 iron and 4 wood. And you need to be certain that you can actually produce enough wood and iron to cover the blacksmiths. So, currently I have 145 foresters producing 116 tons of wood, and 39 tons of wood are being used by blacksmiths to make 3 bows. Yes, those are very heavy bows. By contrast, I have 105 miners making 84 tons of iron, and since bows don't require iron, they're not being used by blacksmiths. And the other 3 spaces currently unused in the town center are for idle peasants, the town square right here, which is for idle peasants, basically people without jobs. This is for castle building, so if I didn't have a castle here and I wanted to build a castle, I would go to the castle build
Building
screen.
a castle makes it much harder for enemy troops to conquer your county. Start with a simple castle design, then upgrade as your materials and builders increase. You may produce castle building materials, stone and wood, in your county or buy them from a merchant. When you give orders to build a castle, some of your laborers in industry will move to castle building until the castle is finished. If your castle suffers damage from a siege, you may repair it as long as you have the materials and the builders.
Alright, so there's basically 5 different castles.
A wooden palisade.
Each one requires a certain amount of resources, and unlike weapons which require wood and iron, for castles it's stone and wood. And even the wooden castles, the palisade and the motte and bailey, require a certain amount of stone and wood. Currently the motte and bailey requires no resources because it's the castle I currently have.
A Norman keep.
If I wanted to upgrade it to a Norman keep, I would need 920 units of stone, but I would receive 600 wood because they're basically taking this apart and building this one. Conversely, if I wanted a stone castle, I would need to fork over 1,920 units of stone, but I would gain 400 extra wood. And if I wanted a royal castle, I would need just shy of 3,000 stone and an equal amount of wood to the motte and bailey, so I don't get any extra wood back. But the royal castle is the best castle in the game. It can house the largest garrison, and it's the hardest castle to take. Also, the castle that you have boosts tax revenue, which is your one way to gain income. Actually, it's largely the only way to gain income outside of selling things. But the higher your tax rate, the less happiness is generated. As I said, happiness is, well, actually, I don't think I said it, but happiness is basically one of the metrics of your county. And the higher the happiness, the more people like you, and the less chance that they're likely to revolt or leave or do a variety of things. And happiness goes up and down based upon your actions. So having a higher tax bracket decreases happiness. Having them eat less than normal rations decreases happiness.
Your people are in good health.
Even overpopulation to a certain extent decreases happiness. Also, things like the plague and various uncontrollable events also affect happiness. Also, creating an army. And this is the Treasury Screen. So it lists all my current resources as well as weapons, which I just showed up because I selected it for a large amount of weapons. So outside of armor, I start with 100 of each weapon, and those factor in.
Use the slider bar to draft peasants from the population into the army. Don't draft too much of your population, or happiness will drop too low. Choose units by clicking on the appropriate weapon on the wall. You can only raise the types of units you have weapons for. When your army is ready, click the Create button. Your army appears on the main map when you return to it.
Alright, so as I was saying, I can create an army, and the army is drafted from the peasants. So since I have 1,169 peasants in the county of Rossiana, that's, I would say, the maximum amount of troops I can have in this army, but that's not exactly accurate. The greatest number of troops I can pull into this army is 596. That will drop happiness all the way down to 1, which is something you really want to avoid. I generally try to, if I need an army, which I arguably kind of sort of do, I try to keep the happiness draw to drop to just around 80 happiness, unless I have like multiple counties, in which case, or I really need like a massive pile of troops and I just didn't care about happiness, then it would be basically all no holds barred. Alright, so these are all the weapons that I can select from. Now, I don't actually need to assign my army any weapons. I can have this army be 257 peasants. It's a stupid idea because peasants are basically cannon fodder, or human shields to protect your other units. Basically, they don't really do much except act as filler and arrow sponges, or enemy archers. And I can raise, so it's a good idea to have all your army be something not peasants, and I can raise up to however many troops I want, as long as I have weapons for them. And since I start with 100 of each weapon, I can only basically recruit up to 100 of those units. So if I recruit 25, say, swordsmen, a character walks through, picks up a sword, and walks off. If I recruit 25 archers, click there, an archer comes by, picks up a bow. The same with pretty much all of them. I do sometimes like watching the animations go by. And there we go. Now, there is one space here for armor, which I don't have any, so it's blank. So if you don't have any one of these weapons don't appear here, and you can't create an army, well, unit types with those items. So that's why there's a space here, and this square is blank. Now, if I produce an army with 25 of each type of troop, I'll still have 132 peasants left. So I know I have a starting army, so technically I shouldn't actually need... No, let's just max out crossbowmen. Now, I won't actually have any archers, but I'll max out swords. That's 7 archers. I'm building more bows anyway. And then when we have the army that we want, we hit create, and it gets created. Now, as I said, it pulls from the population, so rather, originally I had 1,169 people, but now I only have 912. And since it pulls from each industry equally, I'm going to need to rebalance the peasants, so that way they have... the ability to not overstaff things. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Anyway. Alright, so now I'm not producing nearly as much wood as I used to be. In fact, I'm not producing any iron at all. And I'm also producing only 37 tons, which means since I'm still producing the same 3 bows, I am running at a deficit of -2 wood, so if I don't produce any extra wood, I will eventually run out of wood. And
After raising an army, move it toward a neighboring county. To move an army, click once on it, then click on a destination. The army marches toward the destination until it runs out of moves for the turn. Right-clicking on an army calls up its vital statistics.
Alright, so the armies can move up to 15 paces, squares, little ball thingies, per turn. And armies are basically how I gain more territory and whatnot. Now, this map is designed to be rather linear. While I am right next door to my rival, the Knight, I can't actually invade his county directly. Because there's woods in the forest in the way, and in this game, armies can't move past forests, or through forests, I should say. So if I want to attack the Knight directly, I gotta go up to Burnt Umber, cross into Top, and then go back down into Periodically. Basically, go all the way around. Now, I do also have this castle here, and it has barracks for 200 troops. But the problem is, it currently doesn't have a garrison.
This is one of your armies.
Alright, so this is the army I just created, and they come with their own name.
This is one of your armies.
Whereas this is the army that I started off with, and it consists of 100 swordsmen, 100 archers, and 100 pikemen. Now, I can do a variety of different things with armies. I can move the army, as I just described. I can disband it, where it returns to its county of origin, where the people in the army stop being soldiers, the weapons go back into the armory, and the peasants return, well, the now peasants return back to whatever county they came from. So, since this army is from Raw Siena, if I disbanded the lions, all 300 people would go back to joining the peasant population, even if they were in Burnt Umber or Top or Periwinkle. Now, there is a way to basically build an army so that way when you disband it, they disband locally and join the local population. Or at least there was originally. I'm not certain if it's still viable now.
This is one of your armies.
Or you can split the army, which basically takes
This is one of
the
your
army
armies.
that you have and basically
Split
makes
this army.
two. So what I can do is I can actually remove all of the archers from this army, as well as 25 swordsmen and 25 pikemen, to make 250 man armies. So I split the army. I now have two armies.
This is one of your armies.
And one of them, the pigs, is from colorless counties, which isn't an actual county on the map. In fact, it's actually outside the map. It's what the outside section of the map is called. And when you see an army that's from outside of the map, that means when you disband it, they disband locally. So if I needed to move a number of peasants from Raw Sienna to Burnt Umber, after I control Burnt Umber, and I don't want to wait for the peasants to move naturally, I can build a large army, move it to from Raw Sienna to Burnt Umber, split off most of those, most of the army into one that doesn't have an army, a county of origin, disband that army, and they all join whatever county they're currently standing in. So it's one way to move peasants. I should point out that you can't just simply move the entire army from one army to another. Each army that you produce or split has to have at least 50 people in it. Now, you can have an army with less than 50 people, but that's only due to people dying through battle. Now, the army that has the archers and the 25 swordsmen and pikemen, I'm going to garrison here.
Garrison this castle?
Now, with the castle garrisoned, if, say, the knight were to get around and attack my county, if there was no army in the castle, or there was no castle directly, you would have to attack the town center. And if there is a castle that's garrisoned, rather than attacking the town center directly, they have to siege the castle. So, which takes time and effort and a lot more people and resources than just sacking the town center. So, it's one way to defend your lands from predation by the enemies. I can also combine two armies.
Combine these armies.
So what's left of the starting army and the army I just created are now one army, and it consists of 25 macemen, 100 pikemen, 100 crossbowmen, 175 swordsmen, and 7 archers. I forgot what the original army was comprised of, and if I had known that, I would have had more macemen and less swordsmen, and certainly more archers, but oh well. Now, since when you split an army, they require their full movement in order to split an army, and each half of the army only gets 10 movement cents. And since I already moved one army to merge with the other, I only have 9 movement points left. So if I march all the way up here, it continues down on the road. And as I said, this game is turn-based, so once everything that you do is done, you hit end turn, the merchants move, and the seasons change. Also, your opponents move, because each turn is handled concurrently. Well, each player's turn is handled concurrently, so everybody moves and fights and does all that stuff at the same time. Now, as I said, time moves on, so the flooded field is now barren, and if I want to use it, I have to reclaim it, which is a long, arduous process that requires people basically working the field. So I take every spare peasant I have, 184 serfs, will claim one field in 5 seasons. Now I should point out that the more peasants you have, the faster it gets reclaimed. However, it takes at least 4 seasons in order to fully reclaim the field. And since I don't have enough people to handle all of that and manage all the fields at the same time, it's going to take 5 seasons instead of 4. Also, now that it's a new turn, I can move my army forward, and they move farther on roads than they do basically open terrain. So that's why They follow the road, they can get to the town center, but if they go here, they can't. Alright, anything else I need to worry about? No, because everybody's on agricultural purposes. As I said, merchants also move, so they can leave the county. So if you need to buy or sell something, you need to make certain that the merchant's there.
Click on a county to go to that county.
You do have access to a massive world map to see exactly where everybody is. There's also heat maps, so you can see how happy each county is, whether or not they're all being fed, and whether or not the population is, well, there's any idle peasants or needed people. So if I had needed jobs here and I go to this map, it would show me that this is flagged red and I need more people. Whereas if I were to go this, it's now purple, which means idle peasants. I know there's a color graph here, but it's basically need or have access of, so it's basically extremes. Same with food. The foods bar is only flags red if you don't have enough food. I don't believe there's a way to denote the fact that there's a surplus. And somehow I'm messing with the screen. I ended up needing more dairy maids. Then happiness is the only one with a gradient, because happiness is at E1, it's darker blue. So if I move the army all the way into Umber, because it's a neutral county, I don't have control over it. If I
The
want
presence
control
of your
over
men
it...
at arms in our country is unacceptable. Remove your troops now or face the consequences.
Okay, sure, let's face those consequences. I can basically conquer the county.
To try to conquer a county, attack it by moving your army on top of the town center.
What the advisor said. Alright, and I'll get into a field battle against the people, which is what neutral counties are called. And if I hit the gauntlet up, that brings up this screen. So the maps are basically auto-generated, with your troops being spread out on one side and the opposing force being spread out on the other. Now the AI, to call the AI simple is a gross overstatement. They will follow some basic AI pathing and knowledge. So since my army outnumbers theirs and consists of better troops, they aren't going to attack me directly. They're going to sit here and wait for my army to come to them. And if I basically select my entire army and move them around, I can basically put them up here, hopefully out of range of their enemy archers. And it's difficult to select, well, certain units when they're all bunched up like this, especially when they form up into a massive ball and I can't get access to some of the units. What I can do is remove some of the units that I currently have selected, move the rest out, and then select the rest of the units. So the units basically break down in between ranged units and melee units. So, and now that since my ranged units are within range of their ranged units, and my crossbowmen don't have the range as their archers, the archers are going to attack, and I'm going to have everybody just charge. I'm going to put the ranged units here. Like I said, pathing is kind of, well, stupid. Now I am losing troops constantly because of the archers and the melee combat. What I could do, if I'm certain that I'm winning, I hit the mop button, which basically auto-commands all the units to basically charge.
Your order, my lord! To battle!
And now that I've beaten their army, the battle is won. The troops carry the day, another famous victory, and stroll towards the throne. And this is the aftermath. So I lost 10 pikemen, 5 crossbowmen, all of my macemen, and what was that? 32 swordsmen.
Brother, the county has fallen to our troops. You have made an excellent start in your attempt to become the king.
But now I have 2 counties to control. And the difference between Burnt Umber and Raw Sienna is that while Raw Sienna produces iron, or at least it should if I had the people, Burnt Umber produces stone, so if I wanted to build a massive stone castle, this is the way to do it. Well, I would need to get a quarry to produce the stone, and they also have wood production, and everybody's got a blacksmith, so yeah, there's that. Now, what I can do is, since I now have 2 counties and 2 different blacksmiths, I can produce 2 different weapons at the same time. So since Raw Sienna will eventually go back to producing bows, I can have Burnt Umber still produce bows, or I can have them produce other weapons. Bows are basically your mainstay armament. Also, for some reason the computer defaults to 8% taxes. I generally drop it down to 4 until they get to 100 happiness, at which point I put it up to 5. Now, they also have a lot of cattle in this county, and while I could sell or eat the cattle, I could also turn all their fields to grain, I should say. However, it's springtime, and grain only gets planted in the winter, so even if I turn all their fields to grain, they won't actually sow the grain or grow the grain until, well, 3 turns from now. I could also produce another army if I so wish, but that would drop the happiness even further. And they already dislike me because I basically overthrew their local government and took control of them. Alright, so now we end the turn. And the Knight's army continues their march. And I have my army continue their march. And now the merchant, whatever his name is, Fat Barry, I did not choose the name, is now in Burnt Umber, which means anything I buy and sell at this merchant
Buy these goods, my lord?
affects Burnt Umber. So if I were to buy, say, enough ale to give them extra 5 points of happiness. Now I like having the maximum bonus, but I'm actually cheap, so spending more crowns than what's needed to get the 5 happiness bonus is just a waste of money, and happiness changes based off of increments of 5 crowns. So it was, I think, 77, now it's, well, it was 80 happiness, and now it's 85. But that means, since the merchant's no longer in Raw Sienna, if I need to buy or sell anything, I can't do it while in Raw Sienna. Also, while the industrial goods, the wood, the stone, and iron, go into a central treasury, agricultural goods, the dairy, cows, and grain do not. And if I need to move cows or grain from one county to another, I have to do it basically manually. And I basically order supplies to travel from one county, in this case Burnt Umber, to Raw Sienna. At which point this cart gets produced, and every turn it will slowly move from one town center to another. And once it gets to its destination town center, the supplies that are in it get transferred from one inventory to the other. Now, I don't actually need to send any resources from one county to another. That's why there's nothing here.
Moving goods from one county.
Now, I should point out that you can't actually control these carts, and they'll travel the roads as they see fit. They will take, I believe, the fastest route possible, but if there's an enemy army between them and their destination, and that army meets the cart, the army will burn the cart to the ground. Alright, so now we end the turn again. The knight moves his troops forward. He can't get all the way to top.
This is an enemy army.
I would say
This is an enemy army.
He didn't have enough troops to take the county, but he has a over 300-man army, and currently in top now. And the size of the army is dependent upon the number of people in it. So 1 to 300 is going to be a 1-man army. 301 to 600, I believe, is going to be a 2-man army, and then 600 to, well, 601, I should say, to 1,500, the maximum possible army size, is a 3-man army. So that can give you a basic idea of how big the armies can be, what army you're facing. Now, this sword with coins, I kind of note that there's mercenaries there. So while if I go to, say, the Create Army screen in Raw Sienna, I just have the standard screen, and there are no mercenaries currently available to hire within the county. Whereas if I go to Burnt Umber,
A band of Irish mercenaries is available for hire, my lord.
now I can get access to 200 Irish pikemen. Now, their country of origin doesn't really matter outside of what type of unit there are in. There's two different groups of for each type of troop, which basically offer different quantities. The 200 Irish pikemen are the larger of the pikemen groups, so I can spend 3,500 crowns of my currency to hire these 200 pikemen, and they also require 100 crowns seasonal as wages. So I go to the Treasury. I currently have a total army wages of 120, and tax revenues coming in is 398. So if I do hire the Irish pikemen, or just the 200 pikemen, I will have an excess, I will have a surplus still, so I'll still be making
A band of Irish mercenaries is available for hire, my lord.
It's one way to get armies without actually conscripting peasants and wrecking the county's happiness. But the trade-off is that you don't get to select how many troops there are for the mercenaries, and you also don't get to select how many troops. So if I wanted, say, 100 archers and 100 macemen, I can't hire 200 pikemen and then just transfer them over. But I can create an army just of mercenaries, and while I can have them join my existing army, I can't have two mercenary bands in the same army. So if I have these pikemen join this army and then I find like 150 archers or 250 archers, I can't have them join the same army. I should have them build a castle in Burnt Umber, but I don't have the resources for it just yet. Also, as they're reclaiming the field changes. So, were the case that they have, they were at 4 seasons, this would denote that they have 2 left, I believe. But since I didn't have enough serfs originally, it's kind of behind. Also, since it's now autumn, they can harvest the grain. So at the end of this turn, rather than consuming a amount of grain and it being negative, they'll actually gain 1,160. It's like an 8, I think. 1,168 units of grain. Alright, so let's combine these two armies. Even though the new army will no longer have any movement points. Then we hit end turn just to see what the knight does.
This poor, defenseless county has been ruthlessly occupied by one of your enemies.
Right, so they're going to invade the county of Burnt Umber unless I stop them. So I can put my army right here. And I do also have access to certain diplomacy options. So I can dispatch a gift, which is basically crowns, which I can use to pay off my opponents to increase their relationship with me, which is denoted by this bar. I can send a compliment, which is basically flowery words that make them happy. I can then send an insult, which does the exact opposite. Or I can offer an alliance, which basically makes us essentially short-term partners. And we would basically agree not to attack each other, and if we were allies, I can request that they send troops, or there are a couple extra options. I don't actually remember, but since it's just me and the knight, I can't offer an alliance. I can send a compliment, where the default one is verily, your oppression of the weak and your flattery of the strong are worthy of emulation, pray teach me more. Or I can send an insult, where you are ugly and your mother dresses you funny. And the alliance is also as a message saying, sorry, these are troubling times, I ask you to forget our past differences. We needs must fight together to see off those that would do us harm. But as I said, since it's just the two of us, no alliance will ever be formed. Now, I can send a compliment. I can also send money, but that's no dialogue there. I can send a compliment. Let's just dispatch that. Now, we're going to go to war starting next turn, because this army's heading down this road, and my army's in the way, and we're not moving. So, there's that. End the turn again.
What can I say? Greatness runs in the family.
Alright, so this is a reply to the compliment. But then we go to war, because my army's in the way of his conquest. And it plays out basically the exact same way.
New orders, sir.
Pause the battle because while the game itself is turn-based, the battles are real-time strategy, for lack of a better term. Emphasis on lack of better term.
Of course, sir.
Now, I can employ certain strategies. I can split up my army and have some people travel down through this way and then others go around the water. But like I said last time, the AI isn't exactly the smartest thing in the book, so let's just keep them all together.
And double. Of course, sir.
Come on, get across the bridge.
March.
Get across the bridge. There we go.
Sir.
Let's separate out the range units again. Just simply because you don't want the two of them mixed. And have a ridiculously large number of pikemen because, again, they're mercenaries.
We're ready. Come on, chaps.
Now, they also have crossbowmen and some swordsmen and some pikemen and whatnot. Since my archer can hit their crossbowmen, their forces are pulling back to get out of range of my arrows, and their crossbowmen are moving forward. And eventually, they'll get within range, and then my range units will just basically start dueling each other. Then I can move my melee units to attack their ranged units. And now that they're gone, I have my melee units stick right here. My ranged units get together. And I just realized that they'll charge, and there was a gap in the way, so yeah. And just basically clicking on the various places in the army where I want my troops to move. They won't all attack all at once because, again, AI is not exactly smart. But I have more men than they do, so I win. Troops are carried today, another famous victory on struggle towards the throne. And I did lose almost 30 crossbowmen, a whole bunch of some pikemen, and some swordsmen, but no archers. Right, so he has the ability, so he produced another 300-man army. He's also starting to build a palisade in this county to, I guess, help protect it. Also, there are now mercenaries in
Band of
Siena,
Scottish mercenaries is available for hire, my lord.
which is the smallest group of pikemen, but I need 1,800 crowns in order to hire them, and I don't have that many. So I can't hire them even if I wanted to. Also, because this field's going to be done next turn, I don't need all of my peasants not on dairy or grain production to work the field, so they go back, so the spare peasants go back on industry production, and I realized I did not actually change any of the fields to grain and burnt umber. Alright, so since this is basically a bottleneck and they have an army inbound, I am not going to move my army just yet, not until I can get enough wood to essentially build a castle to help protect this county. Alright, and this field is now done, so I'll turn it to grain field. Not grain field, a cattle field, so more fields, cows produce faster. And now I do not have enough. Now I no longer have enough dairy farmers to protect all, well, to maintain all the cattle. So let's actually increase these fields to cattle fields, and it went from overcrowded to medium crowdedness. And also, again, sell off all the extra cattle. Also, now that happiness is in Raw Sienna is at 100, let's put up the taxes to 5%, just so that way it can get some extra crowns. Right, now all the serfs are done reclaiming the field, so now they start basically building weapons and armor. Yes, they would if I can produce enough wood to do so. That balances out, although that means that I'm not going to get a surplus of cattle next turn. Right, and I can only produce 6 crossbowmen, and there would have been idle blacksmiths because I only have so much iron, and wasn't enough for more crossbows. So as I said, industrial resources are shared, so just because Burnt Umber doesn't have an iron mine and can't produce iron directly, doesn't mean that Raw Sienna can't produce the iron for them. Although clicking on the iron mining only tells me how many tons the blacksmiths of Raw Sienna need, and not just an overall idea. So end the turn again, just simply because their army is right on their path. And it's now 284 men against my 428. And, yeah, they brought more crossbowmen and actual archers this time. It's a chunk of war. Like, why is at least one of my units so far out?
March! We are ready! New orders, sir! Of course, sir!
Draw swords! Bowmen ready!
We're ready!
At your service! Of course, sir!
At your command! Right you are then! Sir! At the double!
Now, once again, it's basically
We're ready!
the standard tune of move the range units forward so that way they start attacking their army. Their range units will move up to attack my range units. My infantry units will attack their range units once, you know, they get within
We are ready!
range.
Quick march! At your command! Right away!
No, back
Right
up
you are
here.
then. New orders, sir! At the double! Of course, sir! Quick march!
And then their forces will attack my forces.
Right men, forward! Come on, lad! Come on, lad! Right men, forward!
And now the whole of their army attacks my army.
Right men, forward! We're ready!
And my archers up here,
Right men,
just so they can help kill the pikemen and the peasants. And we win the day. But I lose more men. Specifically 30 swordsmen and what looks like 11 pikemen. And another army appears. Also on the way to Burnt Umber. And they've also finished the palisades, so he did actually have enough wood to do that. So now if I wanted to take top for myself, I'd actually have to siege this castle as opposed to, you know, just hitting the town center. Alright, so it looks like I'm not going to be able to use all of my weapons. But let's pull 293 men. Grab pretty much every weapon I currently have in inventory. And then move that army to reinforce my existing army. Although I think their army is closer than mine. Also, since it's winter now, I should probably have more of these fields be grain. Which means less fields for the cows. course, the simple solution to overcrowding on the dairy farms is to have less cows. So let's actually sell off 200 cow. And now I have enough, well, peasants to work the fields, but not enough grain to make it to
Buy
next
these
winter.
goods, my lord.
So let's burn through most of my crowns to get 1,000 grain. Right, now their 50 archers are attacking my 387 men.
Your orders, my lord?
Alright, so rather than having my, because it's just a small army and comprised of exactly one type of unit, rather than just having my slow as dirt pikeman and crossman and archer move up and do the exact same thing that I've been doing, I'm going to have my slightly faster but still somewhat slow swordsmen just move up by themselves and just engage the archers directly. Now I can take multiple approaches. I can send them up across this bridge and have them be picked off one at a time, or I can send them up this way, so that way they don't have to worry about a bridge. I can also move my pikemen up here. If I was smart, because I have more pikemen, I'd have my pikemen here and my swordsmen here. But, you know, tactics, and they change with the battlefield and all that stuff.
Of course, sir. At your command. Right away. We're ready.
Then I have my one archer and my multiple crossbow units march over this way.
Pikemen, ready. Quick march. Of course, sir. And double.
Draw swords!
Sir.
Alright, everybody charge.
At your command.
Alright, and their archers are now assaulting my pikemen, but while they're focusing on the pikemen, the swordsmen, almost forgot what they were, basically charged in unscathed, and we won the battle with minimal casualties. Lost one crossbowman, one swordsman, and 10 pikemen to their 50 archers.
Look, normally I'd have killed you by now, but I like you, so here's a warning. Stop it, or I'll chop your arms and legs off.
Alright, so if we fight for a significant period of time, the amount of relationship will drop, and then eventually we'll go to war, and then we can never be friends. But it's just the two of us, so we'll never be friends anyway. Now, I can send another compliment to increase the relationship meter, but you can only really do that twice per map, and like I said, we're basically it's me versus him, so we'll never be friends anyway. So it's kind of
Combine these armies.
So let's combine the two armies that I
This is one
have
of
to
your
get 668 men. 9 moves left, and since we're going to be at war anyway, let's just march into his territory and park right in front of his army.
A band of Irish mercenaries is
Pikemen,
available
but
for
I
hire.
can't afford them. Alright, so rather than making bows, let's actually make the one unit, the one arguable weapon that I don't have a unit for, and that would be armor. Now, armor requires very little wood, but a ridiculously large amount of iron, although building 7 units of armor only requires 126 units of iron, so I have 20 extra to play with. However, the 7 crossbows being made here each require 10 iron apiece, so that's 70. So if I don't want my iron to drop, I'm going to need to produce 50 more units of iron. Now I'm producing more than 50 more units of iron. Also, I now have 952 units of stone. Right, and his 43 peasants are now assaulting my 668 man army. Now, I could, well, I was going to say, I could manually fight this battle, or I could just auto-calc. I mean, I technically still auto-calc the battle, which, again, computer decides what's going to happen, but I don't feel like doing that, so... Pikemen to here.
New orders!
Marines gather together, all range units gather together.
Yes, sir!
Got actually had macemen now.
Pikemen, ready!
Right, and since my army literally outnumbers their army by a ridiculously large amount, I mean, it's like over a 10 to 1, they decide to hit in the overgrowth area. Since they're all peasants, they're just going to charge, which they just did. So we went
Listen,
again.
you little twit. Keep it up, and you're going to get it.
Alright. And we're basically one stage away from war.
This is one of your
There's
armies.
still 15 movement. Now, I can attack either Periwinkle or Top, and the reason why I can do that is because Periwinkle shares a border with Rosiena. It's not a passable border, but it's still a border. And you can only conquer counties if there's a land connection between them. So, like for instance, if I only had, say, Rosiena, and you control Burnt Umber or... Well, in Periwinkle, I don't think... I mean, they are technically connected, but I couldn't technically invade Top directly. But if it was, like, more linear on like, a different map, I couldn't conquer a county that wasn't directly connected to my realm. If I were to do that, then it would just end up being neutral, which, while it would deny my rivals that county until they reconquered it, it basically means that I'm be throwing men away at, hopeless battle. Not hopeless battle. Not exactly worthwhile battle. That'd probably be a better description. Right, so he's not moving any more armies, which probably means he doesn't have any armies to move.
Siege. This
So
castle.
let's try to take Top from him. And a siege requires siege weapons, which requires time to build. And I can have up to 2 battering rams, 4 siege towers, and 4 catapults, but that would take a full year to make ready. And since it's a palisade, I don't need that many siege weapons. In fact, I could probably get away with just 1 catapult and 1... technically, I could probably get away with just the battering ram. So that'll take 1 season to build, which is denoted by this little icon. And once that happens, the battle will commence. In the meantime, since it's now autumn and they're now growing grain, they'll get about 800 units of grain. Whereas, well, in Burnt Umber, whereas Rosiena will get 1,010. Also, I have 1,000 units of stone, so I could technically build a castle.
A Norman keep.
Let's build a Norman keep in Burnt Umber. Now, when building a keep, I need to pull people from off of the various industries to build the castle. And it's going to take 2 seasons to build. I mean, technically it takes 800 builders one season. Since I don't have 800 people building the castle, it's going to take 2. But it should help protect my county from being attacked by the knight. Right, so now we attack his castle. And castles have their own defenses in the form of pots of boiling oil, as well as the garrison, which is 50 archers, pikemen, and swordsmen. Now, the more advanced the castle is, the greater the defenses and the more pots of oil. But there's 2 ways to take a castle. One is to eliminate everybody, basically kill everybody, or I can have at least one of my units capture the flag that's right here. If they capture the flag, then I basically win the battle. Also, if I'm defending in a siege and the enemy army captures my flag, I lose the battle. So since it's just a palisade and I just have the 1 battering ram, I'm going to move the battering ram in, just to see if I can draw anybody out, which I don't think I can because they're not peasants, and peasants, well, things that aren't peasants are, well, smarter.
Right away.
But let me move my crossmen up here to see if they can engage this pot of oil.
Right you are then. Right between the eyes. Right
And the oil dumps.
chaps.
I mean, a lot of my units burn because of that, but it's an easy way to get rid of the boiling oil. There are other ways, and I probably should employ them, but they take time, and I don't have time.
We are ready. Of course, sir.
Alright, so now that the gate's down and there's no moat or inner castle or any other inner defenses to worry about, I can just as easily gather my melee units
Ready.
and have them charge. I can also pause the battle,
At your command.
and I believe give units orders. I can't give them new orders, but I can select them.
We're ready. Right away.
Since everybody moves at a different speed, the mace can hit first,
My lord.
followed by the pikemen and swordsmen. Also, my archers have gained their wall, so now they're shooting at the internal garrison.
Come on, lad. We are ready. Quick march.
Everybody up and around, and then fight.
Lad. My men, forward. Come on,
I said, fight them.
come on, lad.
Pikemen take forever to die. They are a heavy defensive unit. Anyway, the siege is won. And since I have taken the castle, that means I have taken the county as well.
This county all but seals your conquest. One more county, and the crown is yours.
Be afraid. Be very afraid. I'm coming to get you, and I never lose.
Current events would say otherwise, given the fact we've fought 3-4 times, and I've beaten you every time, so... But basically that's an indication that we are now at war, which means we can never be friends. Not that we could be friends to begin with. Because, again, it's just the two of us. And since it's winter, move half the, Right, is there a merchant currently in county?
Click on the county you wish to view.
No, there is not. Okay, fine then. We'll do this the hasty way, I guess. Lower taxes.
All your people
of
are
ration.
fed by dairy, my lord.
Everybody eats cow.
Garrison, this castle does not have the capacity to barrack this amount of troops.
Alright, so my one thought is to actually garrison this palisade to help protect this county, but I don't feel like drawing forces away. And he only has one army, one county left, so let's just press on.
A castle has been finished in the county and is ready to receive a garrison.
Alright, so when you build a castle, it automatically gets stocked with troops if you have a high enough population. And the number of troops you get is dependent upon the castle that you build. And it's not a case that if I were to build a palisade, I would get 150 troops, and then when I upgraded it to, say, a Norman keep, I get another 150. It's a total combined amount. So I think you get 50 if you start with a palisade, and if you upgrade the palisade to Motte and Bailey, you get 100 more. And then if you upgrade from the Motte and Bailey to the keep, you don't actually get any extra because they garrison the exact same amount of troops. The only difference is that one's made out of wood and the other's stone. And then Stone Castle, I believe, is 200 troops, and, well, that's what the garrison will be. You actually get like an extra 50. It's not like you get 200 troops, and now it's a garrison of 350. And with the Royal Castle, it maxes out at 300.
Your people are starving, my lord.
Yes, that's because I had them eat all the cow. We're no longer eating cow. Of course, now that there's a merchant in here, I can spend
Buy
all of
these
my
goods, my
crowns
lord.
to buy grain. Also, let's pull a small army.
Your captains advise that it is impractical to create an army of less than 50 men.
Alright, I just wanted to show what happens when you do that. So as I said, the smallest army you can produce is 50 people. So now that I have knights, well, armor, let's raise 34 knights. And I'll have the rest be crossbowmen, just because. Right, and I'll have this small army meet up with my main army. Also, I know it's going to be a, you know, let's not create another army. I don't have the weapons for it. Let's produce more bows. I don't think I'm producing any bows right now. Right, and the castle, since the castle is built, they get back to wood and stone production. Right, and he's produced another army, so let's combine this army with
these
this one.
armies.
And hit his army with, well, everything I can muster. Alright, so these are two medium armies. Well, now it's my large army versus his medium army.
At your service, of course, sir.
So let's just get everybody together.
New orders, sir. Of course, sir.
Because I'm fairly certain there's going to be a battle. I would say of the record books, but it's going to be a
Your orders, my
slaughter.
lord? Your orders, sir?
We're ready. Bowmen ready. Archers.
Although his army is still technically comprised of mostly peasants.
Your orders, my lord?
Pikemen ready. At the double. At your service.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my range units up here across this bridge.
Archers. Ho! Of course, sir.
See if they can attack the peasants. And hopefully that'll draw out their ranged army units without having the peasants actually charge. No, they're just going to pull back. And then once the ranged units are exposed, my melee units will come in and attack the ranged units.
Bowmen ready. Of course, sir. We are ready. Pikemen forward.
Now I'm keeping my knights back because there's a reason for that, and I don't want them dead this battle. Right, so their army is no longer around. So, do I need to worry about anything? No. Okay, good. Let's just proceed on to next turn. Right, and then we can siege his castle.
Siege this castle?
Now, since it's a mountain valley, I only really need, once again, a battering ram. But let's add in a catapult just in case. Also, they're done reclaiming this field, so more cows. Let's proceed on. Alright, so there's 196 archers protecting this castle. Now, the thing about mountain valleys is that they are rather long, so my initial deployment of troops are actually within range once they station archers on top of those towers. So, the first thing I need to do is basically pull everybody back.
Yes, sir.
That way they don't get hit by the archers.
At your command.
See, they're already attacking the... I mean, they can actually attack these guys right here.
Of Of course, sir.
Back it up. And have the battering ram move forward. Alright, and that door's through, and pretty much everybody just retreats back to the second line. I'm going to have my battering ram move forward and hit that there. Now what I wanted the knights for is another way to deal with plots other than letting them dump on your forces. Is take a fast unit, and there's no unit faster than the knight, and basically attack the plots directly. Now, unfortunately, they didn't have enough. Right, and they stationed archers directly in front of the door, so there's no way the battering ram can actually hit it, so it's just losing health. So let's pull the battering ram back.
Your orders, my
Another
lord.
unit of knights.
Of course, my lord.
Hit this pot.
For honor and glory. Let's go. Of course, my lord. Let's go. Of course, my lord. Of course, my lord. Let's go. Let's go.
We're ready. Fight away. Come on, chaps. At your service. Of course,
Now,
sir.
catapults here just in case I lose the battering ram before they broke down the door.
Archers, ho!
That's not the case. So. Now the mountain barely has a moat around it, one of only 3 castles that do, and units can't actually cross the moat, but anybody but the knight can fill the moat
Your orders,
in,
sir.
basically creating
At your
a
service.
land
Of course, sir.
space as opposed to a water space.
Archers, ho!
It's kind of not needed for this type of siege because the moat doesn't surround the entire castle, but the more advanced castles, the stone and the royal castles, do have an entire moat surrounding everything, so
Ready,
it's
my
important
lord.
that.
Of course, my lord. Let's go. Your orders, sir.
Right, so can I have my knights
For
attack
honor
these
and
2
glory.
archers without dying from the other archers? I mean, yes, but at the same time, not really.
For honor and glory. Your orders, sir.
Alright, just pull back.
Let's go. Of course, my lord. Of course, my lord. Of course, my lord.
Roman ready.
Just have my range units getting close and start wailing.
Your orders, my lord.
At your service.
Alright, so that takes them out.
Archers, ho!
Pull them out right now. And then see if the battering ram can get in this time.
Roman ready. Of course, sir.
Alright, so that door's down. Move the battering ram in here.
We are ready.
And have the swordsman and pikemen just straight up charge.
On, lad.
Yes, sir.
On, lads. Iceberg, forward. At your service. Of course, sir. New orders. Pikemen, forward. Come on, lad. Pikemen, forward.
Alright, the siege is won. Castle has fallen to your brave men. And because this is the last county that the knight had,
The addition of this shire to your lands brings the whole country within your grasp.
I can't believe my run of bad luck. How can I have lost? It's not fair and it's not right.
we see the knight off. One of the ways to do so. And since he's the last contender for the throne is now ours. So victory, the crown is yours. Your skill at managing both economies and soldiers has been well proven. You will make an excellent sovereign. And we win. And then it goes back to this screen where we can basically select another map. If it was play now, it would load the next map, but we can select another
Please
custom
enter your
game.
name and select your
All
shield.
that fun stuff. And that's basically the game in a nutshell. Well, I could play another map, and I would probably enjoy doing so. To do so, I feel would extend the video far longer than really necessary. So the next map that I would play would have to be saved until next time, because I'm going to call it here. Everybody stay safe from the plague, and have a good day.